Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. I hope the week's gone well. Thankfully we've got some rain here because it gets so intolerably hot. It's a little bit like that movie Spinal Tap. You think it can't go any higher and it goes up to 11. But fortunately we've had a bit of rain and it's cooled things down. Macro thoughts. Trump says US will impose harsh tariffs on steel and aluminium. US would slap tariffs on steel and aluminium imports to protect national security, would impose tariffs of 25% on imported steel and 10% on aluminium for a long period of time. He said to metals industry executives Thursday at the White House, sometime next week we'll be signing it, and you're going to have protection for the first time in a long time, he said. S&P 500 slumped to session lows. US stocks for companies that consume the metals like Ford Motor Company fell, and treasuries climbed as investors reacted to the news. At one point the Dow dropped more than 500 points on worries of a looming trade war as Trump announced he would impose hefty tariffs. So we had quite a lot of volatility in the market, concern that Trump was finally going to come through on his long anticipated tariff war. Home thoughts. What's the motive behind the unnecessary encroachment to isolate a piece of the park? You can see the point. 26th of December, Boxing Day, I took this photograph of a rhino in the Nairobi National Park. Anger as rail construction begins in Nairobi National Park. This is from the East African, 12 hours or so ago. And then in December 2016, I took this photograph of a lioness in the park as well. It was indeed a rare sight. The little cloister fountain is frozen. This is in Westminster Abbey. I was at Westminster School and remember going to the Abbey every morning to sing hymns. I took a photograph in September 2016 of the cloisters, and I used to enjoy walking around there. This is a painting of Mark Rothko, who was one of my favorite painters. That took me to Paul Virilio. The field of vision is comparable for me to the terrain of an archaeological dig. To see is to be on guard, to wait for what emerges from the background without any name, without any particular interest. What was silent will speak, what is closed will open and will take on a voice. Alberto Giacometti, bronze sculptures, Grand Femme, 3 and 4, 1960, and the Femme de Venise, 8, 1956. I think Giacometti is a wonderful sculptor. And then something more modern from the Saatchi Gallery for his buoyant, still, filling spaces. Federico Picci depicts the swelling feeling that accompanies an encounter with beautiful music in dainty pink orbs. Political reflections, l'Antarctique, laboratoire du changement climatique. The Antarctica is a laboratory for climate change, and indeed it is. It's had its hottest burst of weather this time of year ever, I think. Hunter S. Thompson, Gonzo Vice on Twitter, in a democracy people usually get the kind of government they deserve. Interesting article in The Guardian on how America's identity politics went from inclusion to division. When groups feel threatened, they retreat into tribalism. When groups feel mistreated and disrespected, they close ranks and become more insular, more defensive, more punitive, more us versus them. In America today, every group feels this way to some extent. Whites and blacks, Latinos and Asians, men and women, Christians, Jews and Muslims, straight people and gay people, liberals and conservatives, all feel their groups are being attacked, bullied, persecuted, discriminated against. Trump calls Sessions Mr. Magoo. He's been comparing his top law enforcement official to the bumbling cartoon character, an elderly man who lands in comic situations, largely due to his severe nearsightedness. December 2016, I wrote how Trump is a linguistic warfare specialist. Look at the names he gave his opponents: Crooked Hillary, Lying Ted, Little Marco, Low Energy Jeb. These were devastating and terminal. However, in this Mr. Magoo stroke Sessions case, I don't think it's devastating or terminal. I think Sessions has handled himself with some distinction in this matter. I don't agree with many of his policies, but I think in how he's handling Trump, it's a lesson. Pro-marijuana legislation group selling rolling papers featuring Sessions' face. Trump loses key loyalist Hope Hicks as Russia probe in midterms loom. 22nd of May 2017, so almost a year ago, I wrote a piece called Apocalypse Trump. It certainly feels like that right now. The White House chief calligrapher now has a higher clearance than Jared Kushner. So very interesting. Feels like it's spinning out of control. A lot of close people being lost by the wayside as Smollett comes ever closer. You can feel his hot breath on Trump's collar. Now they need to take account of a new reality and understand that everything I have said today is not a bluff, so said Putin. We will view any use of nuclear weapons against Russia or its allies, be it of small, medium, or any force, as a nuclear attack on our country, said Putin. Our response will be immediate. Nobody should have any doubts about that. And in this, Putin is seen showing his Russia's new hypersonic weapon that strikes targets from space like a meteorite. Took me back to a piece I wrote about Korea's missile program, quoting Thomas Pynchon, a mysterious device named the Schwarzgerät, slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. Gravity's Rainbow is a 1973 novel by Thomas Pynchon, which is about the design, production and dispatch of V-2 rockets by the German military. In particular, it features the quest undertaken by several characters to uncover the secret of a mysterious device named the Schwarzgerät, the black device, slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. And then I was quoting Thomas Pynchon, one of my favourite quotes of all time. But it is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed, and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. The new weapon is called Avant-Garde, apparently. This system differs from existing models of weapons for its ability to fly in dense layers of the atmosphere to intercontinental distances at a hypersonic speed exceeding the Mach number by more than 20 times, the president said. The winged unit of the system is capable of maneuvering, deviating from the flight trajectory for a distance of up to 1,000 kilometers. Such maneuvers make the system virtually invulnerable to any type of missile defense, the president said. The flight of the impact unit can be controlled, even though it gets heated up to plasma formation temperatures when entering the atmosphere. It goes to the target like a meteorite, like a burning ball, Putin said. The weapon was made possible thanks to the use of new composite materials. On the 5th of December 2016, I wrote a piece, The Parabolic Rebound of Vladimir Putin. So much has happened in 2016, from the Brexit vote President-elect Trump, and it certainly feels like we have entered a new normal. One common theme is a parabolic Putin rebound. At this moment, President Putin has fortress Europe surrounded. The intellectual father of the new zeitgeist that propelled Brexit, Le Pen, the Five-Star Movement in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, is Vladimir Putin. It is Putin who's calling the shots in Aleppo, and in a quite delicious irony, it looks like he's pocketed OPEC as well. And then in October 2015, I wrote a piece, Putin is a geopolitical grandmaster. The Z Silk Road is here to stay, says Pepe Escobar. It took only 2 sentences for Xinhua to make the historical announcement. The Central Committee of the CCCP proposed to remove the expression that the President and the Vice President of the People's Republic of China shall serve no more than 2 consecutive terms from the country's constitution. That will all but be confirmed at the end of the annual National People's Congress session starting next week in Beijing. Amid in the West geopolitical storm duly ensued forceful condemnations of the regime and its authoritarian revival. Across the spectrum, demonization of the dictator for life and the new Mao. It's as if the new emperor was about to concoct the imminent launch of a great famine, cultural revolution, and Tiananmen combo. Now compare the hysteria with renowned Renmin University professor of international business relations Xi Jinping, who attempted to introduce a measure of realpolitik. For a long time into the future, China will continue to move forward according to Xi's thoughts, his route, his guiding principles, and his absolute leadership. For all these, consistency and continuity is key. Xi has all but announced his major moves, the Chinese dream, or China as a stable middle-income nation, BRI as a connectivity vector integrating not only Eurasia but also Africa and Latin America, the increasing influence of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as well as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, securing the South China Sea as well as increasing a presence not only across the Indian Ocean but all the way to the third island, a matter of protecting China's connectivity and supply lines. And last but not least, China configured as the top power in either Asia-Pacific or the Indo-Pacific. History will judge Xi by his deeds, the rest is mere xenophobia. 28th of August 2017, I was saying China's parabolic rise has been simply breathtaking. Millions of Chinese have been lifted out of poverty, and China continues to expand at a pace that other big economies can only dream about. Xi Jinping's One Belt, One Road OBOR program binds the world to Beijing because all the roads and railways have but one destination, and that is China. Washington has metasized into an epicenter of risk, Donald Trump affairs, and talks of a unipolar US-dominated world have largely evaporated. President Putin refused to be rolled over by a Victoria Nuland-inspired color revolution in the Ukraine and drew a line in the sand. And one of the collateral consequences of that was to send President Putin into the ready embrace of Xi Jinping. In fact, far from being a unipolar world, we have entered a bipolar or even a tripolar world. Indian military scrambles to keep up after China moves to put forces in Africa. CNBC, I've been talking about this for a long time. From Tanzania to Sri Lanka, the 2 Asian heavyweights are trying to establish a stronger military and economic presence in countries along the Indian Ocean in the quest for regional supremacy. China, the world's second biggest economy, is looking to build what some policy experts call a string of pearls, a network of defense and commercial facilities around the massive area. Beijing in 2016 revealed plans to launch its first overseas military base in Djibouti. Numerous business projects by state-owned Chinese enterprises under President Xi Jinping's massive Belt and Road program, includes a port in Tanzania, have reinforced its efforts. New Delhi, unsettled by the thought of Beijing dominating its own backyard, is responding in kind. Modi secured access to naval facilities in Oman, which is near the Strait of Hormuz, More than 30% of seaborne oil exports pass through that narrow waterway daily. It seems that we're in the middle of a base race across the Indian Ocean, said David Brewster. Indian Ocean borders Africa, the Middle East, Asia and Australia, is home to major sea lanes and choke points that are crucial to global trade. Nearly 40% of the world's offshore petroleum is produced in the Indian Ocean, which also has rich mineral deposits and fisheries. Talking about the 99-year lease of Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, Indian and Western diplomats are convinced that Hambantota will end up becoming a Chinese military and naval base or another Djibouti. Maldives and Myanmar, both recipients of Chinese investment, also seen as possible areas that China's military could use. It's a similar story in Iran, where India Ports Global is developing the deep-sea Chabahar port, widely seen as a counter to China's Gwadar port in Pakistan. The Indian Ocean has also become a hotspot for weapons technology. Beijing plans to deploy sea-based anti-missile systems there, according to recent reports. An analyst said New Delhi's 2017 request for US aerial drones was aimed at monitoring Chinese activity in the ocean. August 2013, I said, I have no doubt that the Indian Ocean is set to regain its glory days. And I was quoting Professor Felipe Fernandez Amesto, who says the precocity of the Indian Ocean is a zone of long-range navigation and cultural exchange is one of the glaring facts of history, made possible by the reversible escalator of the monsoon. On that note, let me put up a photograph of Magoo, which is on the Indian Ocean. Took it just as the sun was coming down. Most populous countries by 2100. India 1.5 billion, China 1 billion, Nigeria 794 million, US 447 million, DR Congo 379 million, Pakistan 352 million, Indonesia 306 million, Tanzania 304 million, Ethiopia 250 million, and Uganda 214 million. Let's move on to the currency markets now. Euro dollar last trading at 122.62, dollar index 90.18 when I checked, dollar yen that's back below 106, 105.87, Swiss franc 0.9400, pound 137.78, the Australian dollar 0.7758, Indian rupee 65.23, South Korean won 1081.95, Brazilian real 325.15, Egyptian pound 17.6445, the rand a little bit softer 1186.78. Put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. It came off because of this tariffs that Trump is proposing to impose. Euro dollar 122.62 last, got a bit of a rebound going. Japan bore the brunt of declines in Asia this morning, with the Nikkei 225 breaking below its 200 moving day average and extending losses from its January peak to 13%. Very interesting article in the FT, the big read, consumer trends, consumer goods, big brands battle with the little guys. Fairfax Hall was sipping a gin and tonic in Union Square, New York, with his childhood friend Sam Galsworthy, when the idea struck. It was 2006, and the friends from the drinks industry had noticed how a handful of artisanal distilleries had sprung up in the US, following the boom in craft breweries. What fascinated us was seeing the reaction to these little distilleries. People really do care where and how things are made. There was a contrast with his employer at the time, Diageo. What these little guys were doing was almost in direct opposition to where the world of fast-moving consumer goods had been going, globalization and big companies getting even bigger. The two men decided to join the little guys. Lots of interesting hard data in that article in the Financial Times. Worth reading. Commodity markets, gold, let's take a look at where that is, 1316.75, coming off a little bit. US crude oil futures settled at $61.64 a barrel, dropped further, now trading at $60.87 a barrel. Let's move on to sub-Saharan Africa. Secretary Tillerson will travel to Chad, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Nigeria, March 6 to March 13, said the State Department. Erdogan, who's made a big play into Africa, was last in Senegal, meeting with the president there. Blackwater founder Eric Prince and Kirill Dmitriev held a secret meeting with the Somali Prime Minister. Hassan Khairi had a secret meeting with Kirill Dmitriev and former Navy SEAL and founder of now defunct Blackwater Eric Prince, who is also the co-founder and CEO of Frontier Service Group, which signed a lucrative infrastructure and logistics contract worth more than $10 billion with the southwest state of Somalia in June 2017. The Prime Minister was giving assurance to FSG as demanded by his friend and close ally President Sharif Hassan of Southwest State that the federal government will not oppose such a contract, which will improve the infrastructure, develop the Barawe port of Southwest State and contribute to regional trade and security. The UAE is also involved as it is the sole investor in this contract. This is also speaks to the Indian Ocean, speaks to the advances all these states are making within there. In Africa, war over water looms as Ethiopia nears completion of the Nile River. This is in NPR. Egypt has had control politically of the Nile for millennia, Lighthead tells Here and Now's Jeremy Hobson. And suddenly Ethiopia has now come along in the middle of the Arab Spring. They started building this dam. Now they can, if they want to control the flow. They say that's not what this is about. Interesting Twitter exchange. Trevor N. Cube, investor interest in Zimbabwe has gained momentum since the departure of Robert Mugabe, he tweeted. Zimbabweans and the international community are hopefully that this is not a false dawn. The country is broken and so much to fix. We had tough conversations about this today in Johannesburg. And then Ariel Mabado responds, there is investor interest, correct, but no firm commitment from international investors. Until then, I don't think there will be any significant investment or change. And Trevor Cube responds, you are so wrong. Investors are committing. The bus has left the station. Might break down, but it's left. I tend to agree with Trevor. Politics can be murderous in South Africa's port city of Durban. Politics around South Africa's third biggest city, Durban, can be a murderous affair. Bloody battle for positions gripping the ANC has left dozens dead in KwaZulu-Natal province in the past year. A local councillor who's represented constituents in Umlazi community outside Durban for the past decade learned in December that party colleagues were plotting her assassination. The political contest is no longer healthy, said the councillor. If I challenge you, it means I will be your enemy till you die. Assassins can be hired for as little as $425. I know people belong to God, said the councillor. If he lets them, they will kill me. South Africa won't have smash and grab of land, Cyril Ramaphosa said. There will be no smash and grab of land, he told lawmakers in the House of Traditional Leaders in Cape Town on Thursday. On December the 20th, the ruling ANC said expropriating land without compensation should be among mechanisms to effect land reform, as long as it doesn't undermine the economy, agricultural production and food security. South African oil shares down 2.66% this year. Dollar versus rand. The rand has been backing up after getting as high as 11.55. Last time I looked, we're at 11.86, but I'm a bull still. I'm going to look for an opportunity to re-enter that trade. Fantastic quote in this article by the Financial Times is David Pilling. President Buhari scored an own goal, equalised, and then took credit for a draw. Nigeria is once again consumed by politics. President Buhari has only recently recovered from prolonged illness, and the economy is barely flickering into life after a long recession. But many in the capital, Abuja, have turned their attention away from today's problems and towards next year's presidential election. The burning question is whether Mr. Buhari will stand for a second term. A few months ago, when Nigerians wondered whether the president would ever recover from an undisclosed illness for which he was being treated in London, that looked barely credible. Today it looks likely. Nigerian politics are, in the words of one commentator, on fast forward to 2019. Obasanjo, who like Mr. Buhari is a former general who ran Nigeria as a military leader and as an elected president, has sought to dissuade the 75-year-old from running again. In an extraordinary open letter which compared Buhari's presidency to a louse that needed crushing, he accused the head of state of being out of his depth. Despite Mr. Buhari's reputation for decisive action and for not tolerating corruption, Mr. Obasanjo said he was overseeing an administration guilty of pure economic management, nepotism, and gross dereliction of duty. Peter Lewis, Professor of African Studies at the Johns Hopkins University, says there is limited scope for a third force in a country where machine politics rules. That does not mean Mr. Buhari will necessarily win, he adds, citing the president's fragile health and less than compelling record. The personalities battling it out may be from the past, but, says Mr. Lewis, I've never seen politics in Nigeria as fluid and uncertain as they are now. The Nigerian oil share is up 12.03% this year. A long-lost portrait of a Nigerian princess described as the African Mona Lisa sold at a London auction on Wednesday for £1.2 million. It's a pretty good painting. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 29.59% this year. The IMF expects Mozambique to default on its foreign debt until 2023. But take a look at the rebound in the Eurobond price. Afrexim Bank to raise $200 million from Nigeria and 2 other stock exchanges. Helios joins African Telecom Tower IPO charge. Set to float in London, Johannesburg in an initial public offering that will value the African mobile phone towers operator around £2 billion, including debt. Today we announced we will rename Barclays Africa Group as ABSA Group and will have one name across our operations in the future. Maria Ramos, who's the CEO, says this is the most important change we have ever embarked on and the most important opportunity for us to seize our destiny. Barclays Africa is going back to its roots. Here in Kenya, the chairman of the committee, Kimani Ichung'wah, said lawmakers, the Treasury, banks were looking into possible solutions for the rate caps. He added that while solutions are being sought out, the protection of public interest should not be ignored. Can banks be trusted to self-regulate? I don't think they can because they are profit-motivated, he said, adding that the current lending rates will probably remain. We must come to a situation where we all agree we will have some sort of regulation, but one that allows flexibility. So this is one of the reasons that the banking stocks have reacted higher at the stock exchange quite powerfully, is because folks began to price in a relaxation of the Rate Cap Act. But the problem is that the relaxation is going to happen in Parliament. Ichung'wah was the promoter of the Rate Cap Act, but it's interesting to see he seems a bit more conciliatory. We set up our fixed income trading business, which has grown immensely and now contributes more than 800 million shillings in revenue. That's Barclays. Barclays is up 17.1875% so far this year. And there's a link there for full year earnings and share price data. In fact, Barclays was one of my picks for the year at the NSE. On the 2nd of January, I said I expect more than 25% absolute return, and we're already at 17.1875. One Africa strategy is what they're talking about, talking of a new world emerging. Very interesting strategy document that is also linked on the website. Citi raises red flag on plan to control Safaricom's prices. This is referencing a study that's recommended wide-ranging measures aimed at preventing abuse of dominance, including retail price interventions. Among remedies proposed are retail price interventions, tower sharing, national roaming, MTR. Asymmetry is also mentioned as a remedy. Obviously, there are going to have to be some changes, but I don't think price fixing comes into it. Safaricom is up 10.28% so far this year. The link is there on the website if you want to dig into previous results or anything else. Kenya shilling at 101.352. Nairobi oil share closed up 6.3% this year and at a fresh all-time high. Excuse me, KCB is up 11.695% so far this year. Equity Bank up 13.83% so far this year. All the share price links are there if you're interested. Co-op Bank is up 15% this year, so you've seen very strong performance by the banks as investors anticipate a relaxation in the rate cap. Kennel Cobill, which is up 14.28% so far this year, traded more than 4% of its shares yesterday, which is a signal of something brewing. I, therefore, take my leave, wish you a tremendous weekend.